Okay, something way out of pocket. I found this on the Tinder subreddit of all things. I first talked to her about how her grandpa passed away. Then she hits me with this because I have D&D in my bio. What am I supposed to say to this? Okay, I find D&D super weird. Are you like really, really into it? No, not really, really. I just enjoy it when I can play it. Have you ever tried it? No, nor do I want to. Again, I find it super weird. Why do you find it weird? Just everything about it. Is it just too nerdy and dorky for you? Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't judge it too early. It's very open-ended, and you kind of come up with your own stories, so you can really make it what you want. Yeah. Okay. What things are you into? More realistic stuff. You know, maybe this person would get along with those idiots who insist on complete rigid enforcement of realism in a game with dragons. Actually, you know what? I take that back because this person seems to be insisting on realism in every aspect of their life and in their hobbies and such. I mean, I think those realism nuts have been one-upped. They need to step up their game. Hello there. I've been listening to a lot of TTRPG horror stories, and I wanted to share mine as well. Just as a note, English is not my native language, so I apologize for any grammar mistakes or typos. My story is definitely not the worst one, but a typical that guy story. I always wanted to play Dungeons & Dragons, but never had the friends or the knowledge for it. But last year, I finally asked a group of friends if they wanted to play. One of them had some experience with pen and paper and offered to DM, but after one session realized he wasn't confident enough to do so. So I still wanted to keep playing and decided to DM myself. I started learning how to do it, looking into world building, and pretty quickly came up with a homebrew world, made a map and a story, and presented everything to the players. They had rolled their characters before, and we were all able to keep them with some minor backstory tweaks because I wanted to include their backstories into the main plot. I told them to feel free to send me ideas or NPCs if they want to contribute to the world building. They really enjoyed that and sent me in-depth descriptions of NPCs from their respective backstories. Well, all but one of them. We also had session 0. I had everyone fill out a Google form with consent questions to find out boundaries and what everyone was comfortable with. We all agreed on a date for session 1. The existing party was now made of an elven wizard, a dwarven fighter, a leonin barbarian, a half-orcish paladin, and lastly, a tiefling blood hunter. Now going into this campaign, I knew about Critical Role, but only from campaign 1, and had never seen the blood hunter in action, and also didn't understand how it worked, while still learning everything else. Since this was our first time playing D&D, we had to learn everything, and I myself basically had to explain everything to this player. The Blood Hunter as well, since he wouldn't take the time to look into the class itself. The player behind Blood Hunter also had not sent me his sheet, since he only did it on D&D Beyond, and somehow claimed he could not copy it, so I never saw what a mess he had created. But alas, we started playing. I introduced them to the first plot arc and a town full of NPCs to try role-playing. It would take too long to explain in small details what went exactly down, so here's a list of things that ultimately got Blood Hunter kicked from the game, and killed in the first 6 months of playing. He constantly talked over other players, interrupting their roleplay, interrupting me as I was setting scenes, or even just explaining. He always wanted to be the center of attention. He had very much main character syndrome. In a fight, he would complain if others just did more damage than him. If he didn't get the kills, he'd be pissed off. His build was also horrible. High charisma and intellect, which often led him to failing his melee attacks, which also made him mad. Alright, so, let's see this character. Oh yeah, I thought a ton about this sheet, you know. I used that point buy system that you told me about, and honestly, I think it just turned out friggin' awesome. So yeah, check that out. And yeah, I think this is going to be the most powerful character in the party. Honestly, if I'm not top of the damage charts, I'm going to be shocked, I say. I mean, it's gonna be crazy how much this character can do. It's gonna be awesome. Right. Now, I talked to him about this, considering we were both learning and offered to rework his stats or character as often as he wants to, together this time. He refused every time, and I asked a lot. He was rude to every NPC, because that's what his character would do, and got mad when things did not go his way. Constant metagaming and dice fudging too. He always was talking over me. He wasn't listening. He always forgot stuff that was talked about in roleplay. He wasn't paying attention to other players' roleplay. Since he never knew what was going on, he made up his own stuff. For the first arc, the party investigated a religious group in a town close to where Bloodhunter grew up, so he figured he knew everything about the town without me even describing anything. He marched into town and went straight to a tavern and started saying, "Siegfried, my old buddy, the tavern keeper, fill me up a beer." Now remember when I said they were able to send me NPCs from their backstory before the game? He never sent me anything other than the overpowered magic items his character should have right from the start. So did I know of this Siegfried? No. Did I prepare for them to go into the tavern and had a tavern keeper NPC planned? Yes. So I just rolled with it and made the other NPC his son and called them Siegfried and Sigmund, both old German names from OG Lord of the Rings style folklore. So it wasn't a big issue, but it still pissed me off. Now, of course, wanting to keep the peace but also have everyone enjoy the sessions, I talked to him about it. Several times. At first in private via text, then in person when we met outside the game at parties. We are close friends in real life. One of the other players is my partner, and I consider them all really close. And every time he said he was going to change, spoiler alert, he did not. And it got worse. We talked after each session then, and he only really got quiet and left quickly after each game. Fast forward to the finale, both for this player's mayhem and the story arc. They were investigating the town and planned to break into the main castle of the religious leader, whom they suspected to be the big bad evil guy. Bloodhunter tried for hours to stall for time to take the castle alone, which the others would not tolerate, and they went together. But they were stopped by two trolls guarding the entrance. Instead of joining the fight, Bloodhunter ran past them and started looting the castle, which appeared to be his plan all along. He said he wanted a thing just for himself. So he did those things. He looted. He ran face first into traps without checking, complained about traps being there, and also about the loot being useless, and I should have had put better stuff there. At this point, everyone is fed up with him. And they just go to the main room when they finally got together again and confronted the Cardinal, the suspected big bad evil guy. After a small wrestle, they want to question him, but Bloodhunter alerts he has to do something first. Is it roleplay? Will he kill the guy? What mysterious deed will he loots? He loots him, cutting off the other players again. To come to an end, Cardinal turns into a magic poisonous bubble demon. They fight their first boss. Bloodhunter doesn't attack him once, but he runs away, even though everyone is urging him to do something. And the rest of the party kill the guy after an epic fight. The first thing out of combat is, oh yeah, you guessed it, Bloodhunter tries to loot the body. Now, I told them mid-fight that the bubbles are poisonous, and the paladin already experienced what it was like to touch this bubble demon's bubbles without protection, since she likes to fight with her fists. Bloodhunter ignores the possible D6 poison damage, fails the saving throw, and suffers 3 points of damage. 3 damage that puts him below 0, after running through 2 traps and being hit once during the fight. They're only level 4, by the way. Me and the other players had enough at this point. I was planning on talking to him after the session, this being his last chance to better himself, but after constantly screwing with the others, no one wanted to help him. He failed all his saves and he died. His last words were actually somewhat emotional, and it still did not feel good to kick him out of the game after, but he took it somewhat well, and we still speak when we meet in real life. After that, I started to focus more on the game, the rules and dynamics, and became a better DM for future sessions. I still play with that group. We just started a player character's backstory, and I'm really excited for the things to come. I also started DMing a second campaign that's going really well. I also play in another campaign run by my partner after I encouraged them to write their own story. I'm sad my D&D experience had a rocky start, but we're getting there. Alas, we grow from our experiences. I think that's an awesome takeaway when things just don't go your way in game. I mean, it really sucks when your game doesn't work out, primarily because, you know, it's your free time. You kind of want to have fun, and when you don't have fun, in fact, the polar opposite of fun, it sucks. Now, this guy stacks a lot of rough behaviors on top of each other. A lot of minor things that build up to be something not so great, and we've seen that before. The one that really gets me is making up lore facts, because I've seen that before. In fact, I've seen that a lot. Sometimes people just get really excited, especially when you let them do some world building, which, by the way, is an awesome DM tip that I think more people should do. But players out there, hey, don't take it too far. You can't just make stuff up, and that's what this guy was doing. You need to get the DM's approval first. Combine that with loot-obsessed selfishness, and yeah, this guy was destined to not stick around. At least he took the parting of ways well. I apologize in advance if this isn't written all that well. This occurred last month when I was attempting to see if I could find any local Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition games to play in after a friend's campaign fell through. I was checking out one of the local gaming stores, and they had a board posted up where people could advertise their games. One immediately caught my attention for a campaign set in Critical Role's Exandria, and even advertised about being LGBTQ+ friendly, and only asked to ping the DM on Discord to be interviewed before being allowed to join the game. I did so, and an interview was scheduled almost immediately for that night. As the Dungeon Master said, they were ecstatic to finally be getting another player to join. I already had a character concept I was excited to try out, a Way of the Mercy monk who works as an alchemist and follows the Raven Queen. The interview came and I hopped onto a Discord call with the DM after sharing the concept with them, and things immediately started to turn bad after just saying hello and thanking them for their time. Their tone immediately went neutral, and the first thing they asked is if I was trans or non-binary. I told them I wasn't, and they almost immediately dropped the call. I messaged to ask if something was wrong, and the DM says that their table has no place for men pretending to play to get into women's pants, wanting to keep their table safe. I let them know that I was gay and have no interest in hooking up with anyone through the game, but they ignore me and further accuse me of lying just to try and weasel my way in. I tried to point out to the DM that their advertisement at the store said their group was LGG.
G is for
GaY!
BTQ+ friendly, but they just swiftly blocked me, and everything just ended there. While it all still baffles and saddens me, I can only guess that maybe the Dungeon Master ran into this issue before, which I can understand if they would be more cautious during interviews, but outright blowing up on someone is a bit uncalled for. As a few people have asked or brought up, I couldn't really tell what gender the DM could have been presenting as. The Discord call was too short, and being safe, I just used they, them pronouns for people I don't know until I get corrected or something. Oh, and a bit of an update. I went back to the local game store today, since I play the Digimon trading card game with friends. The advertisement for their game was no longer on the board, and I spoke with the owner to let him know about my experience from that ad, and to let him know that a bunch of people were concerned after I shared what happened. He will keep an eye out, as he agrees something isn't right, and he also doesn't want that kind of negativity being associated with his store at all. And final edit, I want to avoid giving this information as to not give away where I may live, but to add context, I live in the southern US, more specifically, Texas. Finding an LGBTQ+ friendly game for me is a must where I live, as many have noticed. This is to avoid homophobia and be free to be who I am and to play how I want to play. And as someone brought up, my local game store has an advertisement board because not everyone uses local Facebook groups to find or advertise games. So yeah, thanks for all the upvotes, comments, and kind words. I wish you all the best. Yeah, I find myself very lucky that I get to play D&D with people that I know really, really well. Honestly, it would stress me out so much trying to play a game with completely random strangers, especially since whenever I try to play video games with completely random strangers, I got like a 50-50 good to bad ratio of how many good games I get. Now for the story itself, what the DM is accusing the writer of is stupid. It's dumb. Men generally don't pretend to be gay in order to be with women. And if anyone has tried that, I really want to hear that story because it sounds like a fascinating strategy. But look, my actual point is this. The DM has a right to set boundaries for their game. For example, I don't play with strangers just straight up. If you're not someone I know, I'm not playing with you. But the DM didn't do that at all. They simply advertised a game that was friendly towards queer people, which is great. And then they ended up being extremely unfriendly towards a queer person for possibly the dumbest reason I've ever seen. Rough behavior in general. Nobody got into trouble over this, and I'm not mad over it, but I wanted to share my light-hearted horror story that resulted in a bad ending. These were multiple new players and one veteran. Sometimes these situations, they just happen. I decided to run a new campaign where it gets worse over time, progressively affecting areas the less players combated the threats. I figured this would make it more dynamic, with many chances for players to conflict with attacks and be tempted into investigations. It was a foreign elf race that arrived on ships and began progressively kidnapping other races and replacing them with doppelgangers that would hire elves into high-ranking positions. This race went missing hundreds of years ago, and their high magic and tactics were lost to history until recently. They were equivalent to high tech showing up in a tribal era. It started with them capturing merchants and pillaging their carts in the streets. Players decided to pillage the leftover scraps. They then found bodies of the strange elves from a failed pillage. They looted them down to their underwear and avoided investigating further. Eventually, monsters made by the elves began appearing, practically golem K9 units with tentacles that grabbed NPCs and dragged them into the forest. Immediately out of the 5 players, 3 voted to screw that noise and decided to just mind their own business. I found out the group was less worried about fighting and more worried about collecting gear and focusing on surviving the storm of issues they kept randomly crossing. I was hoping for an aha moment with my players. I didn't want to spoil the campaign by telling them what was happening, and worked hard to make these enemies fun about learning their weaknesses and small puzzles built into their weapons, golem monsters and lore and stuff. I kept hoping one of them would have the curiosity caught by nearly dozens of somethings I laid out as clues or valuable gear, loot, and weapons. They sold anything they couldn't figure out with an Arcana roll, and used all the odd magical items as basic gear, no matter how hard I hinted it could do more. I wrote out an incredibly well-made crit table and escalation system to up the ante, so I was totally fine with using it to the fullest extent possible. But after session 10, I was getting worried. Most towns were empty ruins the players would raid for supplies. Players were setting up safe zones to evacuate and set up base at. The players began treating the world as a zombie apocalypse, basically. Side quest NPCs were getting failed, anyone attacked and injured would be killed. Players assumed the doppelgangers were NPCs that were turned by the golems and built up a headcanon that the elves were the original creators of the golems and they steal people to infect them into becoming a doppelganger, like a virus. They figured the golems were activated from the elven ruins and reappeared through some kind of underground spy network. Somehow, they managed to take all of the possible information I gave them and built a theory that was just 100% wrong. I tried everything possible to just crash the theory, but their general response was, "That's what the golems want us to think. They are just trying to cover up the real truth." By session 16 or so, the world indeed was pretty apocalyptic from the player's perspective. They drove themselves into a deep forest and unleashed monsters around their safe zones as protection. All local villages were long destroyed ruins. They made scouting parties and looted for materials. It got to the point that the elves took over the world months ago. They built towns, security, and the players drove themselves, their side quest factions, and favorite NPCs so deep into the forest that they have no idea the continent was defeated and recovering under a solid elven government that has claimed victory. My escalation system couldn't go any further. I never in my imagination expected them to practically become the only people fighting an apocalyptic war months after it had long ended. Once a player character died while fighting a hibernating owlbear family he accidentally woke up, the last few still active players then went to hiding in an underground city to protect the few NPCs their characters cared about. And the story ended. Afterwards, I explained my idea to them and the real story of what happened. Most laughed it off while the others frustratedly refuted my claims and said, "Well, you didn't hint hard enough." In the end, my original idea was made into a short, linear campaign with the original players, and they defeated the elves when they first beached their boats on the local shore and waged war with the players that befriended the locals and took them to the local forests. I wasn't sure where to post this audio of the story, but I knew it had to be posted. Never in all my years have I seen a story spiral itself inside out like this one did. Now, I'm not gonna lie, this post-apocalyptic campaign sounds like a lot of fun, but you also need to keep in mind that what the DM has in mind also matters. I'm about to run a Lord of the Rings style or Hobbit style point A to point B campaign. My players can't just go, "I want to go point B," and then set up shop and create some kind of merchant campaign instead. I mean, a merchant campaign could be a lot of fun, but what my players are signing up for is a point A to point B style adventure story. There are going to be campaigns where this sort of derailment is going to be welcome, but there are a lot of other campaigns where that's not going to be the case. It's important to check up with your dungeon master before you go completely in the opposite direction. I also think it's okay for DMs to sometimes just straight up say, "Hey, look guys, this is going way off the rails, above table," and discuss it with the players. Because sometimes people just really do not get the hints that you're placing in front of them. And sometimes they straight up don't want to get the hints. And you're not going to figure that out unless you talk about it above table. Hey there, been playing for a while now and decided to share my only real horror story from decades of role-playing game playing. This is going to be a 2-for-1 story, all involving the same person, whom we'll call Chad. The first story is relatively benign, if extremely annoying. However, the second story does involve a content warning for themes. Okay, like I hinted, I've been a role player for a long time, like since about 1980. So I've been around the gaming block a few times by the time the 2000s rolled around. I was without a regular group, and had mostly switched my role-playing to the various MMORPGs that had glutted the video game market in those days. Wanting to get some face-to-face gaming done, I did the old-school pre-social media hike 10 miles uphill in the snow both ways to hang out at a local gaming store and put up some flyers looking for a group. Seriously, you younger kids don't know the struggle. I got a response from Chad and his wife. We met, did some get-to-know-ya chatting, and everything seemed copacetic.
Copacetic.
Oh, I was close. Anyway, they were looking for a new player for their group that was between games and offered their house as a location to play. Nothing out of the ordinary. I said I would be willing to run 7th Sea for them and gave them the general pitch of swashbuckling magic pirates, musketeers, ancient ruin explorers, etc. They liked it, and we all got together to do a session 0 and make characters. Chad created a member of the Invisible College, underground scientists and inventors advancing knowledge while being hunted by the extreme radical inquisition of the not Catholic Church of the not Europe fantasy. Galileo, Da Vinci, and Errol Flynn rolled up in one. The first couple sessions go well. Then, Chad decides he wants to start using the invention rules. No problem. Let your Da Vinci flag fly. And that's what those rules are there for after all. But Chad wanted to use his first use of the extensive invention rules to invent a machine gun in a game set in a fantasy version of the Age of Sail, where the wheel lock is the pinnacle of firearms technology. As you can imagine, this could be a problematic development for the setting. In the spirit of no but, I offered multiple compromises, including the puckle gun, which was a historical development of strapping 8 or so flintlocks together around a central crank mechanism, and they fire in sequence as the crank is turned. Nope, he wasn't having it. He wanted a genuine, 100% accept, no substitute, belt-fed Maxim gun, water cooling optional, straight from the trenches of World War I. I know this conflict has been bloody, but with honor and dignity, and by the strength in our blades, we will prevail. What was that? Breaching door! What? Dude, what? Your character doesn't have a machine gun. Yeah, I do. When did you get it? I didn't get it. I invented it. Obviously, my character is a brilliant tinkerer. That does not answer my question. In fact, it invites more. When did you invent a machine gun? I never asked for any sort of roll, and I would never allow you to just conjure one out of thin air. Yeah, okay, well, I rolled myself, and I got a nat 20, and a nat 20 just means that I succeed at whatever I want. So, that's just how the game works, and even the dungeon master needs to abide by the rules of the system. Wait, what? Okay, as a compromise, I set out a series of steps of stuff he would have to invent first. Things like cased ammunition, firing pins and primer, timing mechanisms, feed mechanisms, so on and so forth. A reasonable compromise, and one that could be used later for story development, kidnappings, and assassination attempts, as word of his inventions and line of technical inquiry traveled. Or at least so I thought. Chad insisted that the invention system required only one roll. No intermediary steps. If you can dream it, you can build it with just one roll. Sure, it would be a god-level difficulty number. He at least agreed, but he laid out how he could spend various time modifiers and bonus die to make that roll in the realm of possibility. Because, yeah, the only reason the Medici didn't overrun their rivals with Huey Cobras in the Renaissance was because Leonardo just didn't build up those extra time bonuses after his helicopter design. I held firm and told Chad to take the progressional steps offer or leave it. He left it, and the 7th Sea game collapsed the next session. Now it's time to leave the annoying behind and travel to the real horror of the story. Content warning for the abuse in effect now. After derailing the 7th Sea game, Chad decided to run Vampire the Masquerade for us. I'm more of a werewolf player for World of Darkness, but hey, let's give it a shot. I made an 18-year-old Toreador, artsy Lestat type vampire, recently embraced, with the flaw of his family still being alive. I'd never played with that flaw before and thought it would be fun to roleplay juggling the family and the vampiric aspects. Again, I couldn't have been more wrong. The first session, we start off in a local nightclub that also served as the city's Elysium, true neutral territory to conduct vampire business. Standard vampire opening tropes. All of our characters were getting our goth on, and my character's cell phone rings. It's my character's mother. I step out to a quiet spot, take the call. Hey mom, what's up? Honey, where are you? Just at the club? Is everything okay? Well, you're missing our special time. Chad, what's she talking about? Oh, you and your mother, you've had a... Yeah, it was just that casual, and yes, there was a literal record scratch sound in my mind when I heard that. What? Yeah, you and your mom are together. What? When did you decide this? I did not agree to that, and I never would agree to that aspect as part of my character. Dude, chill out. It's World of Darkness. That kind of stuff happens all the time. It was at that point, I noped out of there. Later, Chad's wife called me to explain that Chad added in this plot line as a way to deal with his own abuse, to which my reply was, okay, professional therapy would be better, but I understand. It still doesn't give him the right to foist his mental trauma onto my character, especially with no discussion or even indication beforehand or consideration of my opinion. That was the last I ever had contact with Chad and his wife. Bullet successfully dodged. Hope the guy ended up getting actual therapy he needed, but it's not my problem, thankfully. Anyway, yeah, thanks for reading, and keep up the tavern tales. Alright, let's start with the casual stuff, then let's escalate to what happened at the end. A player wanting to do something insane with their role is something that unfortunately DMs are going to need to deal with. Some people think that good roles equal anything is possible, and maybe in some systems that's going to be how it is, but in a lot of systems, that's not going to be how it is. You can't just will away anything in the game by rolling a nat 20, right? And this person wanting to invent a machine gun is a little bit extreme. I do like the philosophy of no, but in theory. But sometimes, look, the answer is just no. I don't know what to tell you. Like when somebody asks me if they can implement League of Legends lore into my homebrew world, there is no but in that. It's just no. And if someone wants to put a machine gun in the fantasy world, the answer can be no there as well. As for this DM's behavior after the game, look, I have no idea if the DM's partner is telling the truth there. I actually doubt it. I think it's a manipulation tactic to get you to be okay with the DM's creepy behavior. However, even if that is true, look, D&D is not therapy. Forcing your players to go through your stuff, not cool. Get a therapist. It helps. Trust me. Alright, that was fun, but I need to go build my new Sonic Lego set, so... Hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, then please do leave a like. If you want to see more of our content, then you can check out our Tavern Adjacent podcast, where we talk all things D&D while also talking about some of my own homebrew. We got a campaign diary coming up. Hope you guys enjoyed that. It's linked in the cards. And while you're there, subscribe to Crispy's Tavern to get more of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down into the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment. I'm not pretending, to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, send them to us. The email is down in the description. But even if you don't have any stories, unless it's like, comment, subscribe, I will see you all next time. Farewell.